Jason Koo's poetry is a thief. It will steal a laugh from you, it will steal a breath from you, it will steal a tear from you, and then you realize that what he's done is written about March Madness. So there's a very special precision, and even though some of his poems are longer, it's a miracle how they feel so succinct and exacting and what they're trying to communicate. And it's something that's very soft and endearing and touching and troubling about human experience and loneliness and how humor is so much a part of that. He's named one of the 100 most influential people in Brooklyn culture by Brooklyn Magazine. Jason Koo is the author of 2 collections of poetry, America's Favorite Poem from CNR Press, and Man on Extremely Small Island, also from CNR Press. He is also the editor of Poems for Kobe, a private limited edition of poems presented as a retirement gift to Kobe Bryant by the Brooklyn Nets and Brooklyn Poets, and co-editor of the forthcoming Bettering American Poetry Anthology and Brooklyn Poets Anthology. An assistant teaching professor of English in Quinnipiac University, Koo is the founder and executive director of Brooklyn Poets and creator of The Bridge. He lives in Brooklyn. He's amazing. We're grateful to have him, Jason Koo.
Thanks, Jessica. Jessica was my student in a Cave Canem workshop I taught this spring. That last poem she wrote during that workshop, amazing poems, hard to follow that. So I wanted to thank her, and I also want to thank Nicole Seeley, who was the one that invited me to teach that workshop. If you don't know Cave Canem, it's maybe my favorite nonprofit, not called Brooklyn Poets. It's a really great organization, as is Jasper Collective, Lost Lit, Grumpy Bird. Thanks to all of you for putting this reading on. Thanks to this amazing audience. First of all, you are all on time. It's incredible. I've never seen a poetry reading, I think, anywhere where people were seated before I arrived. It was incredible. And you're still here, most of you. And you're looking at me like you want me to get started so you can fucking eat and drink. So I myself am standing in the way of my own cocktails and dinner. So I'm going to try to get through this. I have one poem you'll be happy to hear, but it's not short. So I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as possible. I've been writing this very long poem that this poem is from. It's part of this. It's a series of poems. I've been thinking a lot about teaching. Over the winter, I had to do the hard thing of reading student evaluations. Most of the time that I ignore, but this year I couldn't ignore them because I was up for review, and so I was forced to face the very harsh truth that students often come to you with. So I've been thinking a lot about accountability, which is a word that a lot of people throw around. It's a very fashionable word to throw around, especially in sports, which I follow. I'm from Cleveland, so I follow the Cavs. Yay. They're 10-0. They have a small chance, I think, to beat Golden State. But LeBron James is someone that throws this word around quite a lot. And if you'd followed basketball, you know that this is kind of a soap opera season for the Cavs until the playoffs, where it just seemed like, were they together? Were they not together? And who's holding who accountable? They fired their head coach when they were in first place, and everyone thought LeBron had the coach fired. So this is all part of the poem, just to give you some backstory. It's about thinking about teaching and LeBron and accountability, and and it's called Negative Capability. But how do you measure yourself as a poet, as a teacher? There are no analytics for these vocations as there are for basketball. Universities keep searching for better evaluations and keep just making them worse. Keep pandering to the student as customer rather than trying to give teachers essential feedback they can use to get better as a teacher. The best feedback always comes in the form of answers to specific questions about a class, such as the ones I ask students to answer in their reflective essays prefacing their portfolios, but my university's evals make the comments optional and open to whatever they want to say, i.e. rant about. And the most helpful communication, you would think, occurs between two people who know they are communicating, rather than a report one person is making about the other in the form of numbers from 1 to 5 that disagree or agree to varying degrees with questions neither person has approved and might not even be interested in the answers to. Even with the evals we have, there are no numbers I can put in a bucket at the end of every class to record how I did relative to every other day, whereas LeBron literally has buckets he can put in a bucket. I've always thought it must be hard to be a professional athlete in America, despite all the luxuries it affords, especially one of LeBron's stature, because every one of your professional performances is mercilessly evaluated. Everything you do is translated into numbers pored over and broken down by stats geeks who could care less about you personally, their sole interest being whether your numbers justify what is spent on you, or whether, perhaps, another player or two less famous might provide the same numbers at less cost. Absurd, perhaps, to criticize LeBron for not holding himself accountable when he is held accountable by the media and analytics experts every day. How many of us could stand that kind of relentless scrutiny of what we do? Imagine even one local paper covering my performance every day as a poet. Did not write today, nothing to report. Did not write today, nothing to report. Wrote a little in his notebook, a to-do list of what he needed to do today, as well as what he needs to do tomorrow. Also scratched some things off a list he'd made several weeks ago that he hadn't done that ended up on his to-do list today. Yes, that means he scratched them off twice. None of these things involve the writing or reading of poems. Should we even evaluate this guy as a poet? He seems to be rather a kind of daily accountant. Breaking. Quoted large chunks of Heidegger today in something resembling a poem, although the best lines seem to be Heidegger's. Does that count? Unfortunately, we are not poetry experts and have no analytics to back up our claims, but this production seems rather dubious. Plus, it is endless. After the questionable gains he made yesterday, spent an inordinate amount of time on social media today instead of writing. Woke up at 10 a.m. and did not have time, he thought, if thinking is something he does, to write today, so he masturbated in bed instead. Did not write today, nothing to report. Did not write today, nothing to report. Did not write today, see previous report. Would all that constant scrutiny help me as a poet? Perhaps. I would definitely write more, but writing more does not necessarily mean writing better. And what does it mean to write better? How does one evaluate that except internally? There is no competition you can measure yourself against, save for the subjective sense of great writers who have come before you, or great writers out there right now, or the meaningless measuring stick of publications and awards. Really, it all comes down to your own internal sense of a standard, what you have done to that point, and how good you think it is. Not what readers or other poets say, not where a poem or book was published, not what awards were won. And there have been so many examples of long stretches where you weren't writing at all, followed by great bursts of productivity, where all that non-writing time seems to have loaded up material and pressure. Just as there have been so many examples of writing every day that led to hack productivity. Just words on a page with nothing compelling to make anyone, most of all you, want to read them. As a writer, you have to be thinking about originality, how you can break new ground for yourself, if not for anyone's canon, how you can move into subject matter or formal techniques you haven't tried before, or, looked at another way, how you can more fully tap into the well of who you are, put your sense of the world on the page. An athlete, luckily, doesn't have to think about this, though one might work on developing new aspects to one's game, as LeBron developed his post-up skills after discovering he needed these when facing championship-level defense in the playoffs, or reinventing oneself to adjust to changing defenses or the decline of physical skills, as when a young flamethrower in baseball becomes a master of changing speeds and pitch location when he loses miles per hour on his fastball. But there are tangible results to the work one puts in as an athlete to develop or reinvent one's game, One can judge based on numbers recorded in performance. But what results does a poet see? More smiling, happy faces in a workshop? More or better publications? More awards? Shining reviews? One is taught not to trust these things, though I now wonder where or when one is taught this, as trusting them too much can lead to complacency about the very originality one is pursuing. It is a life of vagueness, the life of a poet, which perhaps Keats was trying to redeem with his impressive-sounding negative capability, which all poets love. Double this with the life of a teacher, or perhaps triple it with the life of a teacher of poetry, which almost all poets are, and one can easily see we are moving in a sea of vagary, vague after vague of vagary, no clearer for cognizance of one's French etymology. How does one measure oneself as a teacher of poetry? By how many good poems each student writes? By how much better a student's poems get from the beginning to the end of a course? See previous report on how one evaluates writing better. A student might not be able to apply what you taught her about writing good or better poems until years after you taught her. You might even be dead. Still, the only way that students' poems could be judged good or better in the end would be if she published them, i.e. got them judged by some other authority. Otherwise, she and you would never really know if she had gotten good or better, or if you were just imagining things in your pretty little subjective heads. See previous report on how trustworthy publications are to a poet who aspires to be good or better. Or maybe this isn't true, as the more I think of it, the more I don't think it is. Maybe all that matters is this poet sends you poems years after she took your class, and they're better than Emily Dickinson's. You're sure of it. You don't give a damn what anybody else says, or if she cares to publish them, or has, and the bogs rejected them. Would the development of this uber-Emilying Emily Dickinson under your tutelage be enough to measure your success as a teacher? Even if your other students hated your guts and wrote the most putrid poems possible? If so, would that kind of teacher be better than one who created 4 Carl Sandburgs? Or a Marion Moore and a T.S. Eliot? How many good poets equal a great one? How many okay poets equal a good one? Is the impact of one great poet creating a world that sets forth the earth as an earth greater than the impact of 2 good poets creating a world setting forth the earth as an earth twice? If so, is it greater than that of 3, of 4, of 5? One can easily see our said sea of vagary. Or perhaps as a teacher, you're just trying to help students become a poet, no matter if they're good or great or better or okay, just as a teacher of law is just trying to help students become a lawyer so they can go out there and practice law and make a living. Should you be deemed a success if you taught a room full of 20 poets, 20 students, not intending to be poets, and all of them, in the end, became poets?